Welcome back to No Offense Sports. I'm Makeda Royal, and today I have joining me Walter Peck Jr., shooting guard from Spring Hill College. Walter is the third leading scorer in Division II basketball. He was top 10 in three-point field goals made, and he was named to his conference's first team, and he is a Box Toro All-American. Walter, so I just want to say to you, I came across your highlights on my Twitter feed. I'm like, oh, this guy is cold. Like, you just knocking down shots, contested. So I'm like, okay, cool. Googled your stats. And I'm like, oh, he's a shooter, pretty much 40% everywhere you go since you've been in college, especially from three. And that's really amazing. So thank you for talking to me today. Usually, I just want to talk about your journey. How'd you start playing basketball? And then we're going to talk about college a little bit and some other things. So how old were you when you first started playing, and when did you fall in love with the game?
So I was about, I would say, 7 or 8.
Mm-hmm.
You know, my dad had me in 3 sports: basketball, football, and soccer. So as I, got older, I gravitated towards basketball more. Because all my other siblings, they, went to other sports. I was like, oh, let me see how basketball is. So I just kind of fell in love with it. Starting at the age of about 7.
Okay. So I was talking to you a little bit earlier, and you mentioned to me that you started off your college career as a manager. Talk to me about that.
So COVID hit, and I was Mr. Basketball Finalist actually in high school.
Really?
And yes, and right after COVID hit, usually Mr. Basketball Finalists, they get like offer from a local school, but COVID hit, and everybody hit the portal. College coaches were looking for more experienced players. So that's when, this JUCO hit me up, Columbia State Community College, Coach Neal. He kind of hit me up at the perfect time. I really didn't have anything, anywhere to go. This is actually in Columbia, Tennessee. But interesting part about that is in high school, I was in a dual enrollment program. It was called early college. So basically out of high school, I had my associate's degree. So what this community college was telling me was, since you already got these credits, you can only be here for 1 year. Where typically you stay at JUCO for 2 years. So I was like, you can only be there for 1 year. So I was like, oh, okay. So I did a year there, and ended up just taking some business classes, leaving there, and I didn't do the best that year, but I had some good numbers, but I didn't really have any looks, any interest or anything like that. So I was going to schools, to try out. So I started at UTC, I went there, got a feel for the campus, my GPA was a 4.0. So I was getting accepted into all these schools, academically, but athletically I was really trying to find my way. So I went to UTC, and then they had a coaching change at UTC.
Okay.
So I had to go meet the new coach. I gave him a little index card with all my name and stuff on it, and he said, okay, we'll be in contact with you, and then,
He didn't get back?
Yeah. Never ended up getting back to me. And then that's when my homeboy, who went to Tennessee Tech, told me about Tennessee Tech. And me, I was a diver. Like, I always did research and stuff like that. So I had already emailed every school in the country. My name, height, position, grades and all that. And I ended up scrolling through Twitter and just finding a post from Tennessee Tech. They were having an elite camp. And I saw the coach's phone number at the bottom. So, I decided to text it, and I was, hoping to get a reply back. Usually when you text coaches, they don't reply.
Yeah, that's what I see a lot of people say on Twitter.
Yeah.
But then they also say the players don't text the coaches back. So.
Oh wow, yeah, shoot. But this coach, he actually texted me back.
Okay.
So yeah, we was going back and forth, texting probably every other week, But there was one time I got done from this hoop session, and time was approaching, for students to, finalize what school to go to. I still didn't have anywhere to go, and the time was approaching. I got back from this hoop session. I remember in the car just breaking down crying. I was crying. I didn't know where I was going to go. That's when I really got caught this coach, and I was vulnerable with him. And I opened up to him, I was like, okay, he said, we'll take you in, can't guarantee you anything. I told him I already got accepted, into the school academically. So I moved into the school. This was the first year COVID was uplifted, so the schools were booked. So I got an apartment. Me and my brother got an apartment, was paying money there, and then I went up to the office, and they said, oh, okay, we'll, take you in as a manager. Managers usually do a year, and stuff like that, so.
Is that a common path for a lot of people to become a manager, then play on the team, or not really?
Yeah, it is, but not really.
Okay.
Because that's really
You gotta really be a hooper though.
Yeah.
And you're a hooper, so.
Yeah. So, yeah, usually managers are there for a year. So, I started my managing duties, I'm washing laundry, before practice, the guys will always watch film. So I would get there early, set up the camera, set up the practice cart, make sure the laundry is done. I would get there, early, and the girls sometimes still be practicing, so I could, just put my stuff, men's basketball stuff, separate from the women's, and I was good with my academics, so I had time, to also get my shots in and stuff like that. So while they were shooting film, while I was watching film, I was on the court shooting, and it kind of just started working its way up from there. How it started was the coach, he decided to throw me into a drill. Managers usually when you get thrown into the gyms to set a pick, pass, stuff like that. But this drill, he put me in the shoot, and I kid you not, I didn't miss a shot.
Crazy.
Yeah, and then everybody on the sideline was like, "Who's this guy? Where's he from?" I just grabbed my towel, put it back around my shoulder, and continue to wipe up sweat, do the things managers do, So I was just really consistent at that. And then next thing you know, they're throwing me in more and more drills, and I kid you not, like I didn't have a bad day, and it just kind of kept escalating from there until one day, the coach called me in his office, and he said, "We want to put you on the roster," and try not to cry right there in that moment. It was just a so real moment. Apparently somebody didn't get their paperwork situated to get eligible. So it's
crazy.
Like, yeah, he was gonna get a spot to me. I remember leaving the gym. I called my sister first thing. We started crying together. We started crying. It was a so real moment. So that's and at the same time, I got out of a relationship too.
Oh, wow, yeah.
So my emotions was up and down. I didn't really know how to feel, I was happy, sad, but yeah, and then I became a player.
That's crazy. So how did you feel? Well, you just told me how you felt, but everything definitely happens for a reason. It's a reason those other schools didn't call you back. It's a reason. Is that how you feel?
Yeah. A lot of people ask me, how was you able to get through all that? Did you ever feel like quitting, just giving up? I told them no, because, I was really trusting in, God's process for me, and I tell everybody it's a mindset thing, I told myself, I'm gonna be a manager, but I'm gonna be the best manager that I can be. And I was, doing the roles and jobs of everybody else there. And I said, I'm gonna be consistent. Whatever I do, I'm just gonna be the best at it. And that's kind of how I got to where I got.
And that's why you're one of the best players in the country right now. I wanted to ask you, you went to Tennessee Tech. How did you end up at Spring Hill? What was that thought process like?
Mm-hmm. So yeah, wrapping up that year at Tennessee Tech, I thought I did good. My very first game that I got in, I got player of the game. My very first game.
Really?
I got in. 6 points, 6 rebounds in less than like 2.5 minutes. I got the interview, and actually my number was 52. I didn't have a name on the back of my jersey.
That's a crazy number.
Yeah, it's a crazy one. But it holds a lot of memories for sure. But I didn't have a name on the back of my jersey. And then one of the fans was like, why doesn't he have a name on the back of the jersey? I was getting the game, and then next game, went to my locker.
You had a name on your jersey.
Had a name on the back of my jersey. And then, end of the year came. So I'm thinking, okay, I did good. Now I'm gonna be able to upgrade, get a scholarship. But then I kind of waited it out too. I think I made a mistake there. Instead of just going to the coaches, I waited it out. I was to the point where, I was paying $1,000 a month at this apartment. And I really couldn't afford it anymore.
Yeah, in college that's tough.
Yeah. I couldn't afford it anymore, so actually, as I'm packed out of my apartment and driving on the highway back home, I'm like, let me just call the coach. He hasn't hit me back, because everybody was hopping in the portal.
The coach from Spring Hill or the coach at Tennessee Tech?
The coach at Tennessee Tech.
Okay.
Yeah, to figure out what's the next moves for me. So I said, let me just call him. Let me stop putting it on. Let me just call him, because everybody was hitting the portal. So it was just like 4 dudes working out, and I was in the 4th. So I'm like, I'm for sure they're probably going to. But I said, let me just call him. So I called one of the coaches, his name was Andrew Steele, and I'll never forget what he told me. He said, sometimes, you have to make, selfish decisions for your career, and because I was going to stay there another year, regardless. But it was like sometimes you have to make selfish decisions for your career. And basically what he was telling me was like they were going to bring me back on another year as a walk-on, And I talked to the coaches, the head coach, and he's like, yeah, we see your role as the same, bringing you back on, maybe a little bit more minutes, and that's when I made the decision to hit the portal. And the connection from Tennessee Tech to Spring Hill College came when, because one of the coaches at Tennessee Tech used to coach in Alabama with our assistant coach that was here last year.
Gotcha.
So they connected me there, and that's how I got to Spring Hill College.
So you get to Spring Hill College, you're knocking down all these shots. I saw a lot of people on Twitter say, all the shots in the highlight are contested, and they are tough shots. So how do you even practice that? You just practicing tough shots the whole practice?
Yeah, see, I honestly think it's like my repetition. I'm constantly getting reps in. It's not necessarily things that I do during that season, but it's what I do over the summer. It's those reps that catch back up to me, when it comes to, in season. So I'm going every day. It's just a repetition. Some people say I look like a 70s player, play from the 70s.
Yeah, I saw that.
Yeah, I'm cool with that. I got a unique game style, but it's just those repetitions, that I will say is why, maybe.
Has anybody ever tried to change your jump shot?
No. Nobody has ever tried to change my jump shot, but my coach said when I first got here, he said, we're going to have to do some work with that. But I came out and hit like 5 in a row. And it was like,
if it ain't broke, don't fix it.
Yeah.
What was your mentality going into the season like? You averaged 26 points per game, so.
Yeah, my mentality, since I was in a SIAC last year, I was asking myself, how could I improve? How can I be a better person this year than I was last year? And I feel like that's hard for a lot of people to do, but I really challenged myself in that area because, I had some decent numbers last year as well. So I said, I have to be more consistent in the area. So this year, I chose to focus on, my three-point shot. Last year I would do good one half, next half, just kind of silent. So this year, I was telling myself I need to put 2 halves together, and being more consistent, in my free throw percentage, three-point percentage, as well, and from the field,
I noticed you had some very efficient games, especially when you played South Alabama. You had 30 points in 31 minutes. What did that performance prove to yourself or prove to other people? What did that show you?
It showed me, what my hard work and dedication does. Before every game I plan, so I'm going into the game with a high expectation, and that game in particular, and I wanted to improve from the previous year that we played on. I wanted to make sure, to improve, and I figured going there, free throw was a big thing. I was perfect from the line at that game, so in that game it was just showing myself that it doesn't matter what level you're at. If you can play, you can play.
As you've had a great season here, you've had a great career. What will you take away from your time at Spring Hill College?
I love it here at Spring Hill, for the simple fact it's a small school, close community. I got an amazing coach, and the players and the teams. What I can take away from here, the important aspect of, what you do despite, the losses. Because we wasn't very successful this year, but we still had a good time. And I feel like it's deeper than basketball. It's about those relationships.
Right.
So coming from here at Spring Hill College, they really, showed me that, it's not always about wins or losses, but it's about family. It's about camaraderie. It's about relationships. So that's what I can take away.
You'll be friends with some of your teammates for years and years and years. I didn't get to play basketball at a collegiate level, but I'm actually very close friends still with my AAU teammates from 7th grade. So it's crazy just the relationships that sports can build, and that's why I really encourage it, especially for young kids. Even if they don't want to play in college, it's a great way to make friends. It's a great way to, like you said, hard work. Life's not always about wins and losses, but what you do after. So I wanted to ask you about Are there any misconceptions about being a Division II basketball player that people in the basketball community may have?
One, I mean, I feel like with D2, they think that you're not as good, as say like a Division I guy, and like I was saying earlier, I feel like if you can play, you can play, you know. But I feel like that's one of the main ones. People kind of look down on D2 players, but I think, if you can play, you can play.
What would you say to a high school player right now that's debating, should they go D2, should they go D1, should they go JUCO? What advice would you give them?
I would say it's all about the right fit, and also there was something that I learned along my journey, which was, comparison, is a thief of all joy. I may have got these fresh J's for Christmas, sweater 7s, I always wanted them. But then I look over at my homeboy, he got the Space Jams.
Yeah.
So now all of a sudden, my sweater 7s are not as special to me anymore, and I'm not, grateful for what I have, So I would say similarly in basketball, in your process, it's not about D2, D1, NIA. It's about, really, accepting, your role, in your journey, not really comparing it to anybody else's, and keeping God, at the front of that, So that's what I would say to a young guy.
NIL is a big thing. Do you know of any Division II basketball players getting NIL? Is that a thing? Do they have D2 collectives?
I don't know.
Okay.
I see, like, we didn't do it here, but other Division IIs, they do like jerseys and stuff like that.
Gotcha.
But like, I haven't heard of any,
26 points per game. What, from 3, 40%?
42.
42%? Sorry.
Oh, no,
I
you
knew
good.
it was pretty high
You
though.
good, you good.
That success has led you to a lot of accolades and now to the portal. What schools are currently looking at you, if you feel comfortable sharing?
So I have schools, UTC, the school that I was talking about earlier.
I think aren't they in the NIT?
UTC, yeah, right now. Yeah, they're going to play Dayton, I believe.
Yes.
But Murray State, Lipscomb, Austin P, Florida Gulf Coast, and Mississippi State was a big one. And I would
SEC,
say,
okay.
yeah, San Diego State, Marshall. It's a nice list. I would say I'm truly blessed.
What are you looking for in a program at this stage in your career?
I'm looking for like finding the right fit. Being able to go somewhere where I can, do the similar things that I did here. And most importantly for me, it's about my education. So I'm looking, master's programs, seeing, if there's master programs that I like, things like that. Education is really big to me.
Okay.
And then, just the ability to get along with, my coaches and my teammates,
What'll be a deciding factor for you when it's time to make that decision?
I believe it's going to be, how well do I mesh with, the coaches, and just by talking with someone, I feel like I can get a good gist on it. But like how well I mesh, with the coaches, that's going to be big. And like I said, with education, looking, into the master programs the school has, the master program. And like I said, I don't want to go to a big school and not be able to play. I still want to be able to go somewhere where I could, showcase my talents.
What do you want people to know about your game, especially as you take it to the next level?
What do I want people to know about my game? I say, God is the reason why I play. I feel like my game attracts a lot of people to me, which I can then lead them to, God. So I say when somebody sees my game, sees my funny jump shot, or anything like that, I want them to know that I play because, of Christ. He's the reason why I play. It's not anything that I'm doing, it's, everything that he has done for me, so.
Got to give all the glory and honor to God.
Yeah.
Totally.
Yeah.
All right, so it is March Madness. Pick your champion.
To be honest, Duke. I'm going with going with Duke. You know?
I picked Duke too.
Yeah. I just feel like they're a sound team all around. You know.
Did you make a bracket?
Nah, I didn't really make a bracket. It's just
Yeah, you just like to watch.
Yeah, just going with it.
Okay, which game are you most excited about today?
I don't even know.
I know St. John's is playing Arkansas.
Oh.
I think that'll be a good win.
Oh, yeah.
I think Connecticut plays today, but I forgot who they play. But
Okay.
I did want to say thank you for coming. Good luck in the transfer portal. I hope many more blessings come your way. I can't wait to see you at the next level.
Yes, thank you so much.
Walter Peggs, everybody.